but you were ticketing cars in the area. Now, understandably, certain people probably have the app and are a bit more sophisticated. However, if you're not, you know, and the closest one was all the way down the other end of the block, and if you're going in the other direction, you might not realize where your opportunity is to you know, pay for parking, and so they're being ticketed. So it seems to me that, you know, ticketing these individuals, particularly, you know, elderly, people that might not have that application on their phone, it's a bit unfair.
This is a residential area?
Yes, yeah.
The challenge is that if we don't ticket, we'll get complaints from others on that block that there are people that shouldn't be parked on the block that we are not ticketing.
Well, let me be clear, it's a residential area, however, all the, you know, first floors, it's all, you know, retail.
Commercial.
Yeah.
Anyone want to take that one?
There are 2 hour signs posted, because even though the meters are covered, you can sign there earlier. Because they only allowed a certain amount of times to park on the street.
All right, well, you know, is there a way, how quickly can these meters be, you know, fixed when they are out of service?
When whoever patrols the area, the officer will put the broken meter in the system, but we don't have an idea how long it takes. But we report the meters being broken or not working. Once we report it, then it's up to the applicant to do that part.
So this is one of those issues where there's a division of labor
Yeah.
here, where the Department of Public Works is responsible for enforcement, but our Department of Transportation is responsible for the signage associated with parking and responsible for the actual park mobile and or other methods of parking, paying for parking. So we notify the Department of Transportation when there's a broken meter or when there's some sort of a problem with paying. I understand the point you're making that if it's difficult to pay, how do we enforce? But if there's any way and if that means that they have to walk a bit further down the block to pay for their park, that's what we ask residents or motorists to do. And if it really is a problem, then the adjudication, taking a picture of that broken sign is usually enough for an administrative judge to throw that ticket out. And so, I would say that we would probably receive more complaints if we stopped ticketing.
Okay.
Because of that.
Well,
Also, if it's a meter on the other side of the street, they can get a ticket from that box too, for the multi-spaces. They can get a ticket across the street too.
okay, all right, well, I'll shoot you an email with a picture. If I could get your card in particular, I'll kind of identify the situation I'm describing. If anybody in the audience has further questions.
I have a question.
Oh, all right, sorry.
If there are residences that have their own trash collection and they put out bulk trash, is there a time frame when it should be removed? I have a situation on 5th in Florida. They put out bulk trash and it stays there for days.
Yeah. The same rule applies
Okay.
in terms of when bulk trash should go out and when your regular trash super can and recycling bin goes out. And so,
And the other thing, it's usually private collection. So the city doesn't collect it.
That's a little different.
Yeah,
That's a little bit different.
I'm sorry.
So we still have some responsibility for enforcement. And so our sweep team actually works with a private dwelling or apartment building with their management company to make sure that they have the appropriate contract in place to provide for that bulk trash removal and their regular trash and recycling removal. So if you find that an apartment building close to you or a 4-family home close to you, that their bulk trash is not being collected timely, then you could call us about that too, and we'll work with them first to educate, but then to enforce if they're not pulling it up in enough time.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. If we can continue that conversation outside, we have an ambitious agenda today, so I want to get through as much as possible. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Director Short. I really appreciate, and as does the commission, you coming and talking with us and our residents.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
If any others have questions, feel
Yeah,
free to
please
go
feel free to go
outside.
out in the hallway. I'm sure Director Shorter and his excellent team will be able to provide you with all the answers you need. Next up on the agenda, we have,
Deputy Fire Chief.
excuse me, Deputy Fire Chief Thomas.
It's, I'm Doug Buchanan, the Chief
Oh.
of Communications with the DC Fire Department. He had to run out on that fire.
Okay, yeah, understandable.
So beginning on April 19th, the DC Fire and EMS Department are going to be launching, what's called, can you hand this back for me? Something called a Right Care, Right Now line. What we're trying to do through this program is provide the most appropriate and responsible path to good medicine. Many of us who are born and raised here, it's, I will take it a complete fault for the you call, we haul. DC Fire Department responds on average between 660, 50 calls a day, probably about 400 of which are EMS calls, many of which are not worthy of being transported to the hospital. So on April 19th, we're going to institute and put some members in the OUC or the 911 center. And after the 911 operator goes through some set of algorithm, if he or she determines that that patient would be best provided care by a primary care physician at one of 16 already identified medical facilities or urgent care centers, they will transfer that call to the nurse triage line. And if that nurse triage operator agrees with the 911 operator's initial assessment, and that patient is a MCO or DC Healthcare Alliance enrollee, free transportation to and from that provided clinic will be offered within an hour of that call. What we are doing right now is practicing bad medicine. Someone that calls 911, just the other day I heard on the radio, after eating a bowl of chili from the Wendy's at New York and Florida Avenue, we should not be responding to them with lights and sirens and taking them to an emergency room and clogging up the emergency room with one of our resources. We have 29 transport units in the city. If we're responding lights and sirens to that person who has a bellyache after he ate some bad chili, and then someone subsequently across the street at the FedEx facility believes they're going into cardiac arrest, a transport unit's going to have to be brought from further away. And so we're not addressing the real issue. And what we want to do is put our units in the best position to respond to truly critical and life-threatening injuries. And more so, by working, and if this nurse triage line works, and we'll probably just start between 55 and 65 calls a day, but hopefully within a year, we will build it up to 200. And the ultimate goal is to provide this more appropriate, responsible care of medicine and make a final link between many of these patients that use 911 as their care provider and make that link to the primary care provider so that they will have someone they can call when they stub their toe or have a stomach ache or have a headache. So a lot of the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, are in this sheet. My number's on the back. We're hoping that this will be a soft launch, but again, we're hoping that this is the means or an avenue to provide many of these people that call 911, and we have frequent flyers of several low acuity callers. We are hoping to provide them a pathway to good medicine and ultimately provide them with a better and more appropriate path to good care. Any questions?
Do you have any questions from the commission?
Thank you.
We got, well, we can afford one from the audience. All right, well, thank you so
Appreciate
much.
your time.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. We will post this on our new website.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have our last special guest, Vincent Vase.
Greetings from the National Park Service. My name is Vincent Vase. You can call me Ranger Vince. From National Capital Parks East, which is a collection of sites, Anacostia Park being one, Frederick Douglass House being another, and Carter G. Woodson Home National Historic Site being one. And I wanted to give you a little bit of update on that, as well as those rangers who also take care of some of those pocket parks we were talking about this morning there. So. The Carter G. Woodson Home, 1538 9th Street. Carter G. Woodson, regarded as the father of African American history, the creator of Black History Month. It's in this neighborhood right here, where the house has been derelict for many years. However, it has been rehabilitated. So the actual Carter G. Woodson home, where he launched Black History Month, is open. It's free for tours. Again, 1538 9th Street. I hope you get a chance to visit it sometime. It's a multi-year process. So the actual house, the historic house, has been rehabilitated. There's 2 adjoining row homes that the National Park Service owns. Those are not rehabilitated yet. So it's a 3-phase project. The first phase is done. The second phase has 2 parts. That second phase, the first part we're working on right now, and that is all the plans for the museum, the Carter G. Woodson Museum, the ranger offices, as well as the headquarters for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the organization that Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded. So those offices will be part of that phase 2. So the planning for phase 2 is being done. The second part of phase 2 is the rehabilitation of those 2 row homes. And then phase 3, the final phase, will be the installation of the museum exhibits in those buildings. So the museum's coming, but the actual home itself is open for tours. It's open on Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. So tell your friends, tell your family, we want to get visitation jump-started. It's really a destination area. Even Lonnie Bunch, the director of the large Smithsonian Museum of African American History, said, I could not do what I have done for this museum. This museum would not be here if it wasn't for a generation ago the work done by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So, you're seeing an emerging world-class national museum right here in our neighborhood. It's very humble as it looks, but it's very important. I'd like to do a shout out for Alex Padra, who was an early crusader for this years ago, even before I came down from Baltimore and got my passport stamp to come to DC to get this ball rolling here. And it's really refreshing to see the ball rolling as it is right now. So the Carter G. Woodson Home National Historic Site. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But I'm Ranger Vince. It's Vince_Vaise, VAISE at nps.gov. We got some of the first schools coming. If you have a kid who's in school, a cousin who's in school, grandkid who's in school, and you want these kids to visit the Woodson home, we have bus funding. We got grant money to provide bus funding, and we want them to come, especially 4th graders. We got grant money to take them to Frederick Douglass's house too. Just to close, this is, as Eleanor Holmes Norton said, who also was instrumental in saving the Carter G. Woodson home. We're in the bicentennial of Frederick Douglass, the 200th anniversary of his birth. This 4th of July will be very special in that we will have the property down there in Anacostia, Douglass House, Cedar Hill, open in the evening into the night. So probably for the first time in a generation, you can go to Cedar Hill and, like Frederick Douglass did himself, go on the front porch of Cedar Hill and watch the fireworks explode over the National Mall. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and you can do it. So from your National Park Service, thank you. We value our residents. We're a neighbor too. So thank you so much. Alex, thank you, sir.
And thank you for everything that the Park Service is doing to help to enhance the visitor experience at the Woodson home. Timelines in terms of the next 2 phases.
The first part of the second phase we're doing right now. We're doing a value analysis at the end of the month. That's where they take the blueprints and they say, well, if you put the elevator over here, it could be better, cheaper, or whatever. So all that kind of moving around the schematic blueprints. And then I know for sure we have the funding for that first part of phase 2. We're not really sure their work. We're looking at different revenue streams. National Park Foundation, Omega Sci-Fi, Fraternity is going to help out. National Park Service itself is digging a little bit deeper into its national pockets there so that we can complete that phase 2. Don't have a timeline yet, but fingers crossed, maybe 1.5 years for phase 2, and then phase 3 coming right after that. And, again, one other thing, too. In addition to the intellectual stimulus and having this here and honoring Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was a pillar of this community, part of this community's heritage, is national parks bring money into the community too. I mean, every tourist that comes in, they're more apt to spend $1 at that local restaurant, feed that parking meter, see something and buy something at that local store. So in addition to the cultural stuff, don't forget, parks are revenue generators for a community as well.
Thank you very much.
All right, next on the agenda, we have the naming of the alleyway, and this is in Commissioner Jaffe's district.
Yes, so last month, ANC60 voted to send a letter of support to Councilmember Allen's office to begin a legislative process for naming this alley. He reached out to us and suggested that we get input on a naming, which we have done. This is just a little background. This alley is along the 400 block of M Street. There are carriage houses along the rear that many residents have complained of having issues getting mail, as well as feeling like they have a name and presence. A number of neighbors took the opportunity to kind of take a poll, and we got overwhelming support for the name Yale Steam Alley, which goes along with the historic nature of being right along the alley of the old Yale Steam Laundry. We have, I'll give the list of support, but overwhelming support from about 12 to 15 different residences along the block, so we feel that this is a name that fits with the historic nature of the neighborhood as well as with support of the community. So I'd like to make a motion unless anyone has any questions.
I do have a question. Has any research been done to determine if there have been any previous names for the alley?
I'm not aware of any. The one alley suggestion was Brown's Court, but there's already another one that was done with that. That was the only research that showed that.
Yeah, because EHT Traceries, one of the better known firms that does historic preservation research for developers, including some that are in the audience here today, used to have their offices right on the alley. And I think that they'd probably be happy to do a little pro bono work to determine if there were any previous other names other than Brown's Court. So you might want to avail yourself of that, so that we don't accidentally obliterate another historic name that might already be available.
Yeah, Alice makes a very good point. We ran into a situation a couple of years ago with Freeman Alley, which is the alley that's perpendicular to Kennedy Playground. Someone wanted to have it named after their family member who was killed in 2015, and we found out that alley was actually named Freeman Alley because slaves were actually sold at the corner of 7th and M Street. So that alley was named Freeman Alley or something of the like. And had that went forth, we would have wiped out some valuable history.
Well, I think that's very helpful input, and I think with that, I would suggest that we table this until we reach out for more information, because I don't want to suggest we name something without all the facts with that.
But I'll put you in touch with Emily Ike, who's the president of the HT Traceries, and hopefully they'd be willing to do a little pro bono work for us.
Wonderful, thank
Can
you.
you just spell that? I'm sorry, the Yale Steam for
Yale, Y-A-L-E, Steam, S-T-E-A-M, Alley.
Steam, I-S-T-E-A-M? Okay.
Yeah,
All one word or 2 words?
2 words.
2 words.
So at this time, we will take no action on this item. All right. Moving along, we have 303 to 317 K Street. Request for support for a 2-year extension, modification and consequence of Order 19169. This is in Commissioner Rogers' single-member district. He is not feeling well today, so he's not here. Do we have any representatives from this project?
Yes, hi.
Oh,
Yes, hi. Samantha Mazo, I'm with the law firm of Cozen O'Connor, and we are here today for actually 2 separate but both minor actions. The first is a request for a time extension for this project, just very briefly, and I have some images here. This is a hotel that was approved in March of 2016, and it's at the corner of 3rd and 4th Street.
3rd and K.
excuse me, sorry,
Fourth and K.
sorry, 4th and K. It's at the corner of 4th and K Streets. And essentially, we are requesting a time extension here, which is, you know, a fairly routine request. The situation is that there was a softness in the hospitality financing market in 2016, 2017. It was pretty well documented. And so our client had some difficulty in obtaining financing, but they were successful in obtaining financing towards the end of 2017. They signed and they closed on the property in December of 2017, at the end of December. And so they're going forward, they're talking to flags, they're talking to, you know, hotel operators. We're in the process really of getting things going, but it did just take that 2 years in order to get by. So we have filed a request to the board for this 2-year time extension. Happy to answer any questions there.
Well, have you selected an operator? What kind of operation are you looking at? Is it going to be more of a budget hotel or a high-end hotel?
You know, I believe the answer is that he is really working with a range of operators right now, and he's on his way here, so he can probably answer that question when he gets here. But the hotel that's approved is a 200-unit hotel, and then at the time, we also had to provide for a certain amount of residential on the top 3 floors. So it was hotel from floors 1 to 11, and then a residential use for floors 12 to 14. And so the operators that he was talking to would be operators that would operate both the hotel and the residential above as short-term residential uses. But so that was always an option. That was people that he was talking to. But as of right now, I have not heard the name of any particular flag.
And what's the timeline look like on this project?
My understanding is that my client is in the process. You know, we certainly want to get underway and we want to file for a building permit as soon as possible. But, you know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to file for a building permit if there are things that are going to shift due to, you know, an operator's constraints. So, I mean, he's certainly, from a financing standpoint, wants to get things underway. I would assume in terms of a building permit, would like to get a building permit application filed, I assume by the summer. And I know he's working very closely. He's hired a new architecture firm, BBGM, and which is a very well-established hotel architecture firm, to really kind of take it down and push this thing over the finish line.
Yeah, one of the kind of questions I keep coming to, and I was talking about with Commissioner Brown earlier today, is what kind of market research is being done about the amount of hotels in this area? As I'm sure you're familiar with, you know, we're having a hotel we already have 2 hotels, 3 if you count the Marriott, and we have 1 coming in on K in 6th, 1 on I in 5th, and then another, you know, on 5th Street. And what my concern is you build these hotels, and then they are not going to do well because of oversaturation in the market.
Well, I will say that obviously the zoning permits a hotel of this size, that there's, you know, interest in the comprehensive plan for lodging and hospitality uses. And so as to the specific market analysis for this particular property, I mean, there's also a lot of, I believe that there's a lot of substantial evidence that actually a concentration of hotels together does help generally the hotel industry, and so that could be that issue.
Okay, I was just curious if there had been any.
I mean, I'm certainly, I understand.
Especially, you know, considering there was financing issues.
Right, but the financing has been secured, and I know that there are interested hotel operators. I just have not been told who they are.
All right. I'll get to the audience just in a minute. Let me just let me go first. Yeah, you know, if there's not any questions, I'd like to hear from the committee.
We basically heard the concerns and the issue of why the delay and all. We basically felt it was legitimate, and we felt that we could support it.
Okay. Is there any other questions from the commission?
Unanimous vote.
Yes, Ada.
I live very close to it. My question is about parking.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
traffic,
yes,
Uber,
okay,
Lyft,
yep, everything was
other public
analyzed.
transportation.
So
So you have indoor parking.
we
You
have,
a building.
yes,
with
we've
no
got
parking.
2 floors of below-grade parking as part of this project. 2 floors, we've got 46 units of below-grade parking, which is more than sufficient. Actually, as I'm sure you guys are aware, there's no parking requirement anymore. So we're well over-parked from that perspective. Also, this issue was of the 4-month, was very important when we were going through the BZA application 2 years ago, because people obviously have been and were very concerned about parking. And so we've got 2 floors of parking. We also have sufficient space within the interiors of our below-grade parking units to valet additional parking cars there within the below-grade space. And so that's something that has actually been worked out a little bit better with the new architect who's come on. They've been able to kind of maneuver and find a little bit more space in the interior of the below-grade parking. So we strongly believe we've got a plan for that. In addition, as part of the BZA application, there were agreements with numerous nearby, including the Yale Laundry and other nearby parking garages, in order to be able to share parking and park some, if there is overflow needed, to be able to park it in those garages. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we ask the board a question?
Sure.
Why is no parking required anymore in an area where it's become very congested? It's like you open a restaurant and there's no toilet required anymore. That is
It's a
something
new-
funny
And
because
Exxon station.
It's,
for-
Yeah,
and it's no Exxon station either.
Yeah, this wasn't a decision voted on by the commission. This is the city
new
policy.
regulations for the city.
It was a new zoning regulation that came out within the last year or two that changed within the downtown business district, which is where this exists, that there would be no parking requirements for new buildings.
It's a very, very poorly considered
Yeah.
change.
So where the people gonna park or what's gonna happen?
Well,
mean, I
this
just
this
don't
hotel in
imagine-
particular has two floors of below-grade parking.
Yeah, but is the top 4 floor gonna be apartment?
No, it isn't.
We have
Three.
Top 3 floor,
I thought you were changing.
we're planning to change that.
Right. Oh,
So it'll be, we anticipate that it will be 100% hotel.
Right,
And
right.
also on K Street is the plan to have a streetcar, so we're gonna lose another 2 lane.
Well, yeah, I don't know if we can look that far into the
Yeah,
future.
yeah,
Are
we
we
should-
gonna
we
have
should
a
run that out.
helicopter or
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on
Yeah, I
seeing
wouldn't
that
count on
In our,
during my lifetime.
thank you very much?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, in a lot of these situations, they make provisions to park in other larger buildings where they have, they can accommodate the extra load.
The truth is, in our area, we have a lot of parking. We have a lot of below-grade parking.
Right.
So, when we have the Fifth Street Hotel coming up, and like we talked about at the community meeting, there's a lot of opportunity for them to have off-site parking. I know the Douglas Hotel is gonna have off-site parking as well. I think over at 425 Mass, they have floors, that are unutilized.
So how many hotels, it's less than a mile radius, you have like, for example, if you pick the new Marriott Hotel. We have
Well,
Marriott, we have Conrad, we have this, we have that, and we have those. I understand if convention is going on, but how many hotels we can absorb besides we're gonna, as a taxpayer, we're gonna stuck in traffic constantly?
Yeah, and that's a
And
concern
we don't
I
have that
raised a
much
moment ago.
public transportation either. So we
Well-
have some, but we don't have that much, and I hope you don't have the train. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that, I think parking was a big discussion at the committee meeting, from what I understand. Unfortunately, I'm not a marketing person, nor is our land use attorney. So, if they want to put a hotel there, it's not for me to say, no, you have a better business to do something else, Right now before us, we have 2 requests for the extension and the modification. And, it looks like, with the thorough vetting from our committee, they're in favor of it. And the commissioner that, whose S&D is in, is also in favor of it as well. So at that, I'd like to make if there's no other questions, I'd like to make a motion, the ANC 6E, support, the request for a 2-year time extension of order 19169 and the modification of that order, and that be communicated to the board of the BZA.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
And here's the owner. You passed.
You just missed it.
You're buying dinner.
Thank you.
This next one.
All right, next up, we have 111 Massachusetts Ave, request for support of a modification of consequence. This is also in Commissioner Rogers' district. Again, he's not feeling well, so he's not in attendance tonight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners. My name is Drew Turner. Sorry, my voice is pretty much gone. But we are here to just, we already have